Does retiring in 10 years sound unattainable to you? Today we're here to prove that it isn't off the table, even if you're saddled in debt. Welcome back to another episode of How I Started. My name is Noah Bacon, and today we're joined with Dion McNeeley. Dion got his start house hacking at Duplex while he was in $89,000 worth of debt. If you're worried about a barrier to entry of getting into real estate, let Dion be living proof that you can absolutely do it and get started. I can't wait for you to hear about how Dion did it and how you can think about ways to get over that barrier of entry and get started in real estate. Dion, thank you so much for joining us today.
No, I'm excited to be here. One of the things I really like about investing is focusing on the people starting out. That's when we tend to make our biggest mistakes and have our biggest fears, and sometimes that just stops people in their tracks.
Absolutely. And as I mentioned, Dion, you were in $89,000 worth of debt at the time when you were getting started out. Can you tell me about how you got started with that debt? Because I know a lot of people have this fear that, I have student loans, I have credit card debt, I have a car payment, and I can't get another loan and get into real estate, but you've absolutely done it. Can you talk about what you were doing at that time to still be thinking about getting into real estate?
Yeah, one of the things I like to do is remind people when I'm telling a story about myself is that it has a happy ending, right? I retired after about a decade of investing and made work completely optional and never have to work again. So when I talk about the starting position, some people think it sounds kind of depressing. And that's not what I'm shooting for. I'm trying to show that when you have barriers, we can overcome them. And one of the hardest things to have people understand is we can get rich quick as long as you do this for a decade. The hard part is understanding that a decade is quick. When I started, the $89,000 in bad debt, I actually didn't know about until my divorce. So I became a single parent with 3 kids, got laid off from law enforcement, and had $89,000 in bad debt. And I realized my pensions kept going away, right? After Desert Storm, the Marine Corps downsized. After the 2008 housing crash, law enforcement downsized. I started teaching at a CDL school, only making $17 an hour, raising 3 kids. And I thought, I'm going to work until I die, unless I figure something out. And I was 40, so I didn't have the timeline or the income. I never really made more than $50,000 a year in most of my years of work to invest in stocks and let compound interest do its thing. I understand that's a totally viable option for somebody who's younger or somebody who makes more money. And I didn't have either of those. So I chose real estate because it takes about 10 years. And to get started, I didn't know about DSCR lending. I didn't know about asset-based lending. So ways to get around a bad debt to income ratio, right? So I had a low income, high bad debt. And when I talked to lenders, they basically said there's no real way you can buy a rental. And one lender, luckily, said, unless you had something like rental income on your tax returns for a couple of years, then you could buy a place and we would look at the rents in your debt to income ratio. So I did what most people don't think their family would do. And I moved my kids from our house, right? We had a house on a lake with tennis courts, basketball courts, boat launch, everything you can want. We moved into an apartment and we rented the house out for 2 years. If you want to retire in 10 years, what are you willing to do?
Absolutely. And it sounds like you've made a lot of sacrifices to get there to prove that income as a rental on your first property. Living in your apartment then, and then, it sounds like the next step is going to be to obviously add more real estate into the portfolio. And like you, I started house hacking as well. Can you tell me what your first deal looked like after you moved out of your apartment, turned your primary into a rental property, and now you're, kind of getting out of that hole of the bad debt, and you're really thinking about ways to create a portfolio for yourself. Can you talk to me about why house hacking was so enticing to you at that time?
Well, I wasn't making a lot of money. $17 an hour makes it pretty hard to save. I had a small side hustle. I played World of Warcraft and sold things online. I worked a lot of overtime, so it took 2 years to save the down payment. And then for those 2 years, I had the house rented out to get the rental income to get around the debt to income ratio. And I wanted to buy single family houses and just rinse and repeat. And the idea was low down payment, owner occupied lending. I thought I could buy a house, even with low income in my area. Now, there's some expensive areas. $50,000 a year is not going to let you buy a house in. But there's about 90% of the United States where that will. People talk about these markets or those markets. No, get out of the big cities. I bought my first duplex as an investment when I moved from the apartment into the duplex in a town called Parkland, Washington. It's tiny. It's on the outskirts of Tacoma, so commuters live in the area. But I was able to afford it on a small income, save the down payment, do a 5% down owner-occupied loan, which is offered right now on duplex, triplex, and fourplex, both Fannie and Freddie, backing conventional loans that you can owner-occupy. And so finding out about the small multifamily made sense because single family houses in my area don't cash flow. So the rest of my portfolio since that first house that I owned has all been small multifamily. I bought duplexes, 1 triplex, and 1 fourplex.
That's amazing. Let's dive into the numbers a little bit more on that, because I know you put a low down payment, 5%. It sounds like the house was at a lower price point than some things in your typical market that you said, obviously. And can you tell me what you had for a down payment, your closing price on the property, and then, what you were renting it out for when you moved out?
One thing I'd like to point out is real estate is often close to unaffordable. other words, everybody would be buying it. And for a decade now, everybody's had a reason why you shouldn't buy real estate. So 2011, everyone was saying double dip recession, double dip crash. 2013, people were saying home prices are above 2008. Nobody can buy a property now. So I bought a first duplex for around $300,000. 5% down was $15,000. But I had to have reserves, and I had to have money for immediate repairs and money for closing costs. So in those 2 years, I had saved $28,000. This was a very frugal lifestyle for those 2 years. So every year that I was buying real estate, people were screaming, this is the time, this is the worst time to ever buy. And I guarantee in 2 or 3 years, when whatever happens with price or rates, people are going to be saying, I wish I bought in 2024. Can you imagine being able to get a duplex, triplex, or a fourplex with 5% down? That was the golden age of real estate. And people are screaming, I can't do it because it doesn't cash flow. 2 things shifted in the market for me to find my most recent deal that is different from what I did the previous decade. So yeah, how we find the deals has changed, but they're still out there.
Absolutely. And it sounds like you're not really ever listening to anybody when they pull that oak meter, which I love about you, Dion. So, that first deal, moving out of your house, getting into the apartment, getting into your first house hack, which I would call your first investment property that you lived in. Do you still have that property today?
Until death do us part. I don't plan on selling. I'm not a flipper. I've never touched appreciation. Now, I do invest in a high cost of living area for a different reason than appreciation. I've never done a home equity line of credit, never done a cash out refinance, never sold a 1031. I invested for cash flow, and with the goal of the right amount of cash flow from the least amount of units. And that doesn't come from scaling faster, getting a bigger portfolio, or selling or tapping equity. It comes from recycling cash flow, continuing to work, to make work overtime, to work a side hustle, to add cash flowing rentals to my income so that I could save more. And that's why it took 10 years. There are faster ways that involve a little more risk or work. I was working full-time raising 3 kids, and I'm super lazy, so I wasn't looking to make a job out of investing. I wanted to be able to buy a place that needed very little work. Most places I didn't have to do more than maybe $1,000 or $2,000 worth of repairs to make it rent ready, because I prefer to buy already occupied properties because of my binder strategy. That strategy where my tenants ask me to raise the rent, that makes it a lot easier to find cash flowing deals on the MLS.
Can you tell me about what you did after that first house hack then, where obviously you're looking for, like you just said, you're looking for a smaller unit with high cash flow. I don't need to create this massive empire that I'll maybe have 5% ownership in. I want 100% ownership in my small portfolio that'll get me to financial freedom. Were you following that house hacking strategy then into your next, small multifamily property, or were you looking for other ways now that you had that income on your tax returns?
Looking back, I probably should have house hacked more. I house hacked the duplex after 2 years. And then I didn't house hack again until the 8-year mark when I purchased my first fourplex, my only fourplex. Since I had a 10-year plan, I was completely comfortable working and saving and living fairly frugally for the first few years. So 2 years of saving to get that first house hack. 2 years of saving with the rented out house cash flowing, the other side of the duplex I'm living, bringing my cost of living really down. I was paying $1,500 a month for the apartment. And then when I moved into the duplex, my cost was about $300 a month. So I added $1,200 a month to my saving. 2 more years, the next duplex was purchased with a 20% down conventional loan. So I was able to save enough money to buy an investment property because time. In 4 years after starting, okay, I'm going to focus on investing, I'm going to save, I'm going to buy a house hack, and then save. In 4 years, I did 2 deals.
Well, it sounds like you had a really, really deep understanding of exactly what you were looking for, and it's proven in what you've done on your portfolio. And I want to speed up a little bit here because you've gotten to a point that a lot of us are trying to achieve. I know I probably spoiled it in the beginning of the video, but you've retired, you've quit your W-2 job. Can you tell me what number you were looking for to retire at, if you were looking for a number, and was it really scary to quit your W-2? Because I know for me, that sounds really, really scary to me. I don't know if I'll ever have that point in my life to be quitting a W-2, but you've done that and you're living proof here today. So can you talk to me about what that transition was like for you?
It kind of shocked me, and it was because of the numbers. You said, what are the numbers to retire? And so I'll break it down. I'm very analytical when it comes to this. I think why engineers do so good at real estate. I'm not an engineer, but every time I've met a really successful engineer in real estate, it's because they look at things like I'm about to explain. We talk about a freedom number, and most people say, what's your FI number? So in the Financial Independence Retire Early community, they'll say, you can look at the last 6 months of expenses. You can kind of get a feel for what your life costs. You're not going to commute. You're not going to have dry cleaning. You're not going to pay the highest taxes because earned income is taxed the highest. You're not going to be saving for retirement. So a lot of your expenses come down. Healthcare goes up because now you're covering 100% of the premium instead of 5 or 10%. So you can factor out, how much do I need? I don't recommend retiring on what you need. I spend spend about $4,000 a month. I have house hack, so I'm paid to live where I live, so I don't have housing costs. I can do anything I want on about $4,000 because my costs of living are very inexpensive. So when I got to 4,000, I would work. There's no way I would stop, because how would you handle anything like 2020 or a health concern or a couple of evictions or all the things that can go wrong? So what I used is a multiplier. And what I did is, the more money you need in retirement, the smaller multiplier you need. So if you need $20,000 a month to live comfortably, I think if your cash flow passes 40, you could probably retire. So a 2 times multiplier would work. Since I need 4, I went with a 4 time multiplier. When my cash flow from my rentals passed $16,000 a month that I don't have to sell my life for 1 hour at a time, I felt kind of silly going to work, right? So my current portfolio, I retired in 2022, and this is what it looked like when I retired. I had 16 rental units. I had purchased a duplex in 2021. I called it my Sweet 16 because that gave me my 16th unit, 15 to 16. I made $204,000 in profit, and I spent less than $50,000.
You're talking like way over my head here now. I haven't even thought about retirement anywhere in my life yet, and that's an extremely inspiring story. And it's not all because of real estate, but it's because of your drive to follow down that path of real estate. So I know a lot of people think about starting off house hacking, but you've actually gotten started a little bit later than a lot of us and used house hacking to retire. Which you recommend this to people that are trying to get started off a little bit later in life, like you did when you were about 40 years old with your family?
A lot of us talk about house hacking to get started. We're usually younger. We usually don't make as much, right? I had the bad debt. I had the kids. I had the reasons why house hacking made sense. Awesome way to get started in real estate. The mistake people make is, instead of thinking of house hacking as how to get started, it's a great exit strategy. I retired in 2022. These are weird numbers for me to say. I can't believe I say these numbers out loud and they were real. I had about $500,000 sitting in the bank. It's a terrible problem once you have a bunch of cash flowing rentals and you start making money at work. The money piles up. I could have purchased a bigger portfolio. I could have purchased a forever home. So what I did, I was actually thinking of going to Portugal. So I went for 2 months, did some scuba diving, and I was looking for a place to buy. A couple things told me not to buy in Portugal. So what I did is I came back to the US and I purchased the duplex that I'm in now, which is on the Puget Sound, has a 260-degree water view. It's an over-under, so both units in my only over-under have that same water view. I walk down to the ferry that takes me to Seattle for $2 and I can eat on the waterfront. This is like the ultimate retirement home house hack. My retirement is better because now not only do I not have housing costs because I paid cash for it, I have a tenant producing income, so I'm getting paid to live here. When I travel, I'm going to spend 5 months this winter in Thailand. It's my goal, right? I might go to the Philippines and some other places. There's somebody on my property. I don't have to worry about my house. If people can incorporate it into their exit strategy, imagine how much easier retirement is if you eliminate one of your biggest expenses.
I could not agree with you more, and that's why I started my portfolio house hacking as well. Like, you've ended your portfolio house hacking. So it's amazing to hear you go from that whole journey, sticking to this strategy. So I know a lot of people are, watching this video because they want to figure out how to get started. And you've clearly made a pretty great playbook for us with house hacking. So what's the biggest piece of advice that you can give somebody that, you didn't get when you were getting started out a couple of years ago, and you did it in 10 years and hit financial freedom? Did you get one golden nugget or one thing that, I wish somebody told me that before I got started?
I'm going to cheat and give you 2. The first one is less than 10 seconds. I wish somebody had said this when I was younger. You are going to be alive in 5 years. You should start investing like it. That simple. People talk about, it's so great to be able to retire. It's so great to be able, it would take so long. It's like you don't think the next decade's going to happen anyway, whether you invest or not. In a decade, don't you want to be thinking, I'm glad I did that? So that's the first one. Here's the second one. 6 steps to getting started in real estate. This is the same for anybody, no matter what strategy you pick. It changes towards the end. Learn how to save. I wish somebody said you learn how to save, and the most important thing when it comes to saving is make more money. Increase your income. Develop a side hustle. So we want to make more money, reduce our expenses. The second thing is credit score. Even if you go for a DSCR loan, they're going to look at your credit score. They don't look at your debt to income, your salary, how long you worked, anything like that. But your credit score matters. Third, talk to a lender. You don't know what your options are until an official, a professional in the field says something like, you can't buy a rental unless you had something like rental income on your tax returns. I wouldn't have known that if I didn't talk to a lender. Fourth, choose a market and a strategy. The 5th step is when we now go talk to an agent. This is where you set up your auto searches. You could do driving for dollars or mailers or whatever your strategy is when you picked it to find your lead sources for your funnel of properties that you want to look at. And then the 6th step that happens when you're starting and when you are 12 years into investing like I am, hunt for deals, buy the good ones. And as you get going, as you get 2 or 3 deals under your belt, and I'm a fan of base hits, right? You don't get RBIs without base hits. You're not going to get anybody home without getting anybody on base. As you have those base hits, you start looking for better and better deals.
Well, you've laid it out so perfectly for us, Dion. You've given us the playbook. I think there's a lot of users that can take a lot of golden tips that you've given us out of this video. I really can't thank you enough for your time here today. It was so much fun, and it's always a great opportunity to pick your brain a little bit and get to catch up with you. Do you have anything else you'd like to say before we wrap up here?
I like to answer questions for people starting out. It's one of the reasons why I'm the teaching assistant for the BiggerPockets boot camps. So if you're in the boot camps, remember I share my email all the time. You can always reach out with questions, and I answer every question: financial, real estate, retiring, anything that you think that I can help make your journey better with. I'm happy to help.
If you're looking to learn more about Dion, you can find more information in the show notes below. And I'm Noah Bacon. You can connect with me on BiggerPockets on our platform there. We have so many resources that you can find to get started. And you can even hang out with me and a lot of other speakers down in Mexico this year at BPCon, which is going to be hosted in Cancun, October 6th through 8th. You can find more information at biggerpockets.com/events. And I really look forward to seeing a lot of you there. Please like and subscribe to the BiggerPockets YouTube channel. We'll have plenty of more stories like Dion's on how you can get started and really get over that barrier to entry in real estate. Thank you so much and have a great day.